There we go. Okay. Tansitalia ni tatamtik Raylene Whitford Nitsigaso Nekiosquamina Apitawagosan. My name is Raylene Whitford. I am Cremate, and I just said hello, everybody, in my traditional language, which I am not a fluent speaker of, but hope one day to be. I just want to start with the land acknowledgement. So it's always a great honor to be asked to acknowledge the land that we stand on today and the original peoples of this land. Today, I'm joining you from Ayapiao Sagaigan, which is now commonly called South Buck Lake, which is on Treaty 6 territory and the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4. Geographically, it's basically located in central Alberta in Canada. This is a really special area to me and to my family. It was and continues to be a traditional gathering place for the Stoney and Cree peoples. And it was a place where for thousands of years, ancestors gathered around the lake to fish and harvest medicines. Today, it's a place where humans and more than humans gather to rest and to heal, including myself and my family. I also want to acknowledge the deep and continuing connection to the land, sky, and waters that all traditional custodians and First Peoples from around the world have maintained for tens of thousands of years. I also want to recognize the strength and resiliency of our elders and knowledge keepers, both past and present, who bravely hold the memories and rich traditions for Indigenous peoples around the world. So I'm mindful that you may be joining us from another corner of the world. So I encourage us all to reflect and to give thanks to the First Peoples of this land where you're joining us from today. And I also ask you to remember that wherever you are, you stand in a place that carries the footsteps and hearts of many First Peoples who've been here and will continue to be here for thousands of years to come. So Auntie Sarah reminded us, just as we were chatting before, that today is International Trans Day of Visibility. So I just want to say, let's all support and celebrate and stand behind our transgender superheroes that are in our life today. Today and every day of the year should be Trans Day of Visibility. I think these people are amazingly strong, resilient, and beautiful gifts in our lives, so they deserve to be celebrated. We also briefly discussed that the Catholic Church rescinded the doctrine of discovery yesterday. So yeah, interesting time to be in, but I think today officially is a very good day, or a deadly day. So just as a brief intro about INDIGI-X, INDIGI-X was a passionate project for mine for a couple of years, and we now managed to assemble a growing global network of Indigenous changemakers who are working to create positive change in their own communities and to build a better future for all Indigenous people around the world. Our mission is to empower Indigenous changemakers through our global community and provide a platform for them to connect, to collaborate, and share knowledge and resources. So everybody here looks pretty familiar. I'm sure you know about INDIGI-X. So we're just so happy to have you with us today. It's such an honor to have both Auntie Sarah and Jaynaya join us as panelists. And this is the last of our series of workshops for the federal government's fiscal year 2023. And what a way to end it all with these two amazing women with us. So the topic of discussion today is how to stay deadly. And staying deadly can mean different things in different countries, but it basically means, how do you stay at the top of your game? How do you remain excellent? How do you keep your confidence even when things are getting a little bit tough? And I think both of these people here today are amazing examples and can share some of their knowledges with us. So with that, I might ask Auntie Jaynaya to just share a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself and tell us what staying deadly means to you.
Hi, Mob. As mentioned, my name's Jaynaya Winmar. I'm a Noongar Ballad woman from Querding in Western Australia. I've lived on Melbourne for 20 plus years, so definitely acclimatised to Melbourne and loving it over here. Most of my work life, or the majority of my work life, has been here. And I am a dual business owner. I describe myself as a glow-getter because I love to spread the love and help other people along that journey as well. Indigenous entrepreneur, being a dual business owner, I kind of have fallen into that entrepreneurial space as well, and then creating space for other mob to also step into that space, and for them to articulate monetizing their passions, and kind of navigating that space of selling culture, but not actually selling culture. Like, we have that ingrained into us, like we feel like we're always selling culture if we're approached to do something, but sometimes it's just that passion piece that we kind of need to validate and monetize in order for us to succeed. And it's a really tough space for a lot of people to navigate, so kind of step into that at the moment. I do a lot of unpaid consultancy stuff and paid consultancy stuff. I'm on the board of a lot of deadly Indigenous organisations. This week we have the Grand Prix in Melbourne, and we've managed to get 10 Indigenous students up from Shepparton to meet with the Formula One drivers yesterday. So they had a one-on-one with Lewis Hamilton, one of the only deadly Black drivers in Formula One at the moment. So getting country kids to kind of sit and meet with him and have a discussion, and he just went, you know what, you can do anything you want to do, go and do it. So a lot of them kind of walked away feeling like that weight has been lifted about that. And I think that deadliness for me is whatever you want to see to kind of empower yourself, and kind of realizing that our ancestors are always walking with us. So how you amplify your deadliness just depends on what you want to do. So I know in corporate, which is predominantly white, male and stale environments, I kind of black myself up. So I usually like have earrings on and deadly shirts or designers that I'm kind of I love at the moment. So I kind of wear my black armor to go into those spaces, because I know that majority of those people only ever meet an Indigenous person once in their life. So that impact that I'm having on them in that present moment will share that deadliness. And I think that's part of that glow getter mentality that I have. So that's me in kind of a roundabout nutshell.
Amazing. I love the glow getter and your definition of it, because I've heard other definitions. And the first time that I got to meet you in person, which I felt very fortunate to do, I definitely saw that. So thank you, Jaynaya. Auntie Sarah, good medicine. I'm so pleased. We've never actually spoken in person or virtually before, so it's so great to have you here. Please tell us about yourself and tell us what staying deadly means to you.
Yeah, I just thought that how white male and stale was really funny. I just gotta say that. Tanse, Tanshe Oki, Nista Anako Apis Konaki. Hello everybody. My sacred name is Far Shooter, or Shoots Far. My artist name is Good Medicine, all one word. Because I believe we all have that inside of us. I also go by Sarah, or Auntie Sarah, and usually her pronouns. I am Cree on my dad's side, and also Métis on both my parents' side. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. I think it's really important that, you know, we're able to just talk about how do we keep going. This world and society that we're in was not really built for us. And so I feel like, you know, staying deadly, you know, is just such an important thing, you know. For me, something that comes up a lot that I just really feel is that, you know, sort of like I mentioned, is that we all are born with medicine. You know, we're all born with gifts. And for one reason or another throughout our life, you know, we get taught that that medicine is not important, or it doesn't have a place, or maybe the people you grew up around didn't understand what your gifts were and what that medicine was meant to be used for. And so, you know, being deadly, you know, to me really has a lot to do with honoring those gifts that you were given and being able to use them. And I was at a youth seminar. I was emceeing a youth, not a seminar, a conference recently. And I told them, one of the things that I wanted them to take away was that your purpose is your medicine. I think we get really caught up, thinking that, we need to find our purpose, or our purpose is like this thing, outside of us sort of thing. But as my friend Dwight Fairhat, had brought up, is that, we feel alive, and are living our purpose when we're using our medicine. And so, that's what staying deadly to me really means. A little bit other things about me. I do a podcast called the Wilma Podcast, the White Lives Matter Always podcast, where we talk about how white lives matter all the time and the rest of us just matter sometimes. I'm a rapper and DJ by trade, I guess. I don't know how to say that. Been rapping for like 8 years. And I started DJing last year. And I just started learning how to B-girl. And yeah, just sort of finally getting out there as an artist to do some more of those things. And it's interesting, just on that topic of staying deadly and using your medicine. I was really, really heavy into smoking matoi, which is cannabis. And, I stopped smoking in December, and I still have a good relationship with that medicine. But the thing is, I was doing a lot of things that would inhibit our gifts. And so I think too, on that topic of staying deadly, it's also being aware of the ways that we take away from our own deadliness and stop doing that. Because I think sometimes, we make ourselves small intentionally because it's safer. And so, part of staying deadly is feeling, feeling those feelings that are inside of us and being courageous enough to know that, our medicine is worth sharing and worth using.
So much of that resonated with me, Sarah. I think I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and somebody mentioned that we used to be really good at making decisions with our heart, and then our mind would work out how to do it. But now that we've totally switched, we've now made decisions with our mind, and our schooling systems, our universities, they train us to just be mind focused, ignoring our heart. So yeah, that what you offered just really spoke to me. So my next question is really getting into the thick of it. Like, have you ever felt imposter syndrome? I assume yes, but if you did, how did you overcome it? How did you deal with it? Because I think as well as women, it's, maybe more so, maybe we experience it more than men, I'm not sure. But, how did you kind of face it, and how did you overcome it to get to where you are today? And I'll ask whoever wants to go first can go first.
Jaynaya, you want to go first?
I think you can go first, because I think you schooled me on this earlier. So I'm like, yeah, this is your jam.
Well, where I would start about feeling like an imposter, I mean, first of all, like I'm mixed race, you know what I mean? And so a lot of times not feeling Indian enough or Native enough or Indigenous enough, comes in. Also as a trans woman or as a two-spirit trans, I think that feeling of not being woman enough, is a thing. And I think, it's really going back to that thing that, the creator made you, you know what I mean? We get really caught up, when we come into this world, we're taught all these things, either they're taught directly or indirectly. And I think that you got to really listen to your gut and listen to the feelings that you have, because they're really going to guide you. And I was reading this, sort of reminds me, there's this book I'm reading right now, because I'm doing feminizing vocal classes. There's this book, Freeing the Natural Voice. And so it's really interesting. It tells the story about how when we're babies, we're younger, we have have these pangs. I just learned what this word means, pang. I might not even be using it right, but I think I am. So we get these pangs, these sort of, it's the first thing that comes to a feeling, and so when we're kids, we haven't learned to, like cover, what we feel or what we think. We just sort of say it. And they give this story, this example of a child who's wants a cookie. And so they get this feeling, they're hungry, they want a cookie, probably, because it's sweet too. And they just throw this tantrum and they're just so upset. They have this feeling of like, I want a cookie really bad. And they get scolded for it. And so the next day, they get this feeling again, similar situation, and they want this cookie. But the last time it happened, their parents told them, no, you got to be a good girl, you got to ask nicely and all these things. And not to say manners aren't important or any of that, but that child then learns to cover up that natural feeling that they had. And, they figure out, okay, I've got to do this thing to get what I want. And it was sort of, in a way, there's like we learn to sort of cover up what we're actually feeling, and so that's sort of what I feel about being an imposter, is that, it's sort of about this game of playing. I want to put forward the right image of myself so people will accept me, or people, I'll sort of, have to, I don't know, just say things in a way that people will acknowledge. And what I've found is that I've had to go back to, what are those feelings that I have? What are the things that are really driving, what my desires are? Because, there's a book called One Drum by Richard Wagamese that I'm also reading right now. And he talks about, in his culture, just being breathing is knowing that you're connected. In his culture, in Anishinaabe culture, just breathing means you're connected to all of creation. So if you're feeling lonely or separate from things, if you go back to your breath, you recognize that every inhale has been an exhale from your ancestors. And, there's sort of ways to think about it where, you're not actually alone, even though we've been sort of conditioned to be that way. And so, I think feeling like an imposter is really just feeling like you should be somebody else other than you are, sort of thing. And anyways, that felt like a really long-winded answer.
No, there was a lot of medicine in that. So what I'm hearing is that when you find your center, when you find your medicine, when you find yourself that your ancestors intended you to be, there is no worry, and you become, your own voice, you become your own person. You kind of sit in a place where you don't need to worry about being good enough or smart enough or female enough or beautiful enough or whatever. The world's
like
enough.
Sorry, yeah, totally. I think you're hitting it on the head. And just like on sort of the two-spirit side of things too, when I was really little, I remember feeling, well, there's this one time when my grandma was going to come over, and I told my sister, who's just about 2 years younger than me, I didn't know how gender worked, and I told her, you be the boy now, I want to be the girl. Like, I asked her as if we could switch, huh? And but I didn't know how that worked. And so we sort of traded clothes, or like I started dressing that way, but then I felt really ashamed of myself. And so, I think part of it too is like letting go of that shame, I guess, of like, who we are, like you're saying, that centered part of you. Anyways, again.
Oh, we got deep really fast. The shame as well. Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to move on to Auntie Jaynaya. So have you ever felt imposter syndrome? Has it helped shape you, or what's your experience?
Yeah, I think firstly we need to be on Auntie Sarah's book list, or book club. Some of those books are really deadly. I'm making bloody notes about what books to be reading. But yeah, I think like imposter syndrome is one of those things that as we go, and I've started to describe it in Australia, because when colonizers first came, there in the first lot of fleets, there was hardly any women. I think I did numbers when I did a presentation last time, and you look at the women that were present here, and it was all like our deadly black elders and ancestors. So when women actually got brought out to the colony, they were pitted against each other. So like we kind of automatically were given roles or given positions in society where it was against what the white colonizer female perception was. So automatically we kind of that was ingrained into us with, you don't look like this, you don't belong here, you and I think for Australians on the call, like it's been how many years and we're only just getting a question to be a part of the changing the act for the Constitution, and that's only just been approved yesterday. So our country is how many years old, and we still don't have any process in regards to our First Nation mob. So when we think about imposter syndrome, like that sense of belonging hasn't been there for us for a long time, even though we are strongly connected to our culture and our country and our land, like being in the Western society, because that's unfamiliar to us. So that's not our way of life, but we need to assimilate to being in that way of life in order to survive now. So part of that assimilation process is identifying that the environment that we sit in, like that male white environment, doesn't necessarily reflect us, but we belong there regardless of whether we think we don't belong there. We belong wherever we need to be belonging, or wherever we want to be. So when I first started to go into these environments, I kind of I've got really curly hair, and I've normally got it in a bun, so it kind of looks like a fro if you brushed it out while it's dry. So straightening my hair and making sure I was wearing a business suit, and I kind of looked like everyone else sitting around those tables, and kind of muted my personality and my ability to question stuff. So my first few years in the corporate environment was exactly like that. So I felt like that imposter because I didn't look like everyone else, or I didn't think like everyone else. So in order to kind of succeed there, I kind of muted myself and that version of me to fit in. And then realizing that I don't need to necessarily fit in, my opinions matter. And I think that self-growth and self-awareness that you get as you get older is predominantly how we learn that journey. So I think part of what I do now is help the young ones kind of on that discovery process in whatever they are now. Like I think we had this amazing young guy in one of our programs for Culture's Life, and we got in a car with him, and he goes, I think I might go full drag to the NAIDOC ball. And I'm like, well, why don't you? Like thinking, like not actually thinking about all of the stuff going on in his head, but for him to articulate that loudly was like a huge thing in that environment for him. But for me, I'm like going, yeah, well, why don't you? And he kind of looked at me and he goes, yeah, I might. And then since then, like hit the ground running, that kid. Like he has won the Australian Miss NAIDOC drag. I don't know what it's called, but like the head title for it and all of this stuff. So just that ability to empower in your own way is one of those important things, because we all feel that imposter syndrome in some way. It's how are we utilizing our deadliness to kind of empower not just ourselves but others in our ecosystems, because they're very influential on us as aunties, especially. Like you have like people that will come up to you as an auntie and go, what do you think about this? And you don't realize the value of your word. And I think that's really important too. So yeah.
Isn't it just amazing when you see somebody who is in the exact place that they are meant to be? They're in themselves, they're in their voice. They have this like innate power, don't they? Like it's a strength that inspires others. So thank you for sharing that. That reminded me of that. So the next question, which we covered a little bit, but what role does culture and spirituality play in helping you maintain your deadliness? And I'll leave it open again. Whoever's brave.
I think Auntie Sarah helped me with this one earlier too, because I was talking about all of the artwork that I started in COVID, because in Melbourne we had one of the hardest lockdowns, and it was hard for us to go out as community, because like they had rules around how far you went, who you interacted with, like you could only have 2 people in your bubble or 1 person in your bubble, and for me, I was fortunate I had like another Indigenous mob in my building, so they went through a process of cooking, so every time they were posting things I went, that looks yum, and they went, we'll meet you in the lift. So for me, like, I had that kind of little sneaky ecosystem, but for me I kind of fell back into art and creating art pieces that reflected like my journey, but just letting me sit in it, because there's a piece that I kind of did and I didn't realize why I had done it or what it reflected at the time. I just did it because like I saw it, I painted it, and I sat it in under my TV, because I've got the TV cabinet, and I needed to actually look at it for a while, and then I realized it was the Capricorn constellation description, and because I'm a Capricorn, I didn't actually realize it until I was scrolling through Instagram and saw the kind of the constellations. I went, oh my god, that's what I've painted. So like sometimes we don't listen to our spirituality, or we forget that it's there, because we're so busy in surviving and thriving that we forget to sit silent. And Auntie Sarah said, like, when I described myself as not really being artistic or deadly at any of this stuff, and I said, my sister's got all that talent, I've got all of this talent, and you kind of realize that you do have bits of talent, it's just you don't think it's your strength. And I think that's been one of those things too, like the colonizer aspect of it. Our culture and our spirituality was stripped away from us for many generations. So re-adding that value into your life and into who you are is really important. Like my mum is a language teacher, Noongar, and I don't speak fluently, but I always go to her and go, hey, like, how do I say this, or how do I do this? And so she's like, you know these words, it's just that the confidence in what you have and your ability to say them all out loud, because we have elders that are there that speak fluently and beautifully, that you kind of just go, oh, I can't do that to that same level, but it's having the confidence to do that. And I think when we were in New Zealand, the only time I did it was when we were in Marae with the Aunties over there. So sitting in that space made me feel culturally safe to actually introduce myself in language. And for me, that was one of the most beneficial moments in the whole thing. Like, I did amazing deadly stuff through the whole thing, and but for me culturally, that was like, hey, this is what I've done, and like this was deadly. So yeah, I think for me that kind of summed up how I sat with that cultural aspect of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting too, that you felt self-conscious speaking your own language, huh? They really taught us some funny habits.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, well, what first comes to mind about culture is that, I think in Western society, we're so sort of dominated by anthropological narratives, that culture is like this thing we do on the side, or like, it's sort of this extra thing, and I do think I really liked what you said to Auntie Jaynaya, just about how, we need to add this into our life, because we do. And we have to add it into our life because we live in a colonial society. You know what I mean? Like, we have to survive in this these Western white spaces. And, really what our culture is a way of life. It's not and our spirituality is a way of life, and they're not separated. You know what I mean? They're a part of it. Like there's things, and like even, yeah, but they're separated, you know, because we're colonized, and we have to think about it that way. And, you know, for me, you know, I find it really interesting, you know, around spirituality, that we're really, you know, there's things that are sacred, you know, and that do sort of take a certain spiritual approach to things. But I was talking with one of my well, past bosses, I guess, and there's an Anishinaabe word for a Ojibwa word for a casual smoke. And so they would, you know, gather with pipes, sacred pipes, and they would smoke, but it would be a casual smoke. They would smoke and they would just talk about things, you know, just philosophically discuss things. And so it was really nice to think about it that way, because it made it sort of feel like, you know, not that, you know, we shouldn't feel a certain way when we go into our ceremonies, you know, that we're deep in prayer and these sorts of things. But at the same time, that, like, you know, our spirituality is always with us. Like our, you know, our ancestors do walk with us, and the things that the culture is meant even to complement the spirituality, and the spirituality complements the culture. There's, you know, I don't even know if we have translations for those exact words, you know, in our languages, because, you know, we have to sort of think about it in that way. And that's the other thing, you know, I like, Jaynaya, how you brought up language, because like one of the bars that I have in my song, or the song that I'm working on, is fighting about identity in English is maddening. We need to learn about who we are in the words, or in the languages of our ancestry. And that's a paraphrase, actually. I have trouble remembering my own bars sometimes, but you know, I say that because, like, today, you know, as natives, sometimes we fight with each other. We'll say, well, you're not Indian enough, you know, because of X, Y, and Z. And we do that in a way, you know, just to sort of say that there's, you know, well, we're sort of living in the wake of colonialism in our communities, and we've had our culture stripped of us, and you know, we feel things about that, and we do want to be connected to who we are. But it's also a challenge when, you know, you have to actually learn the white Western culture to be able to take care of yourself. And another thing, you know, that this sort of makes me think of is one of the elders that I work with, Taleni Heavyhead, Taleni Rose Heavyhead from Jaynaya, the blood tribe. You know, this old lady told Patrick, I can't remember his last name, but he was passing on this teaching to Taleni, and he shared this teaching with us, that we shouldn't be ashamed to pray for money, because back in the day, you know, we would pray for things. If we were hungry, we would pray, you know, for the buffalo to come, you know, if we needed teepee poles, you know, we would make an offering that we would know if we didn't know where they were, or these sorts of things, you know. So and today, in order to feed ourselves, to clothe ourselves, these sorts of things, you know, we do need money. And so I think that's an important thing to say, is that we shouldn't be ashamed to pray for money. You know, but I also think part of it is, you know, how we've sort of been Christianized, that, you know, you don't want to be greedy, you know, and not to say that, you know, you should just care about yourself, but that we say it's greedy to pray for money, when no, like, we need money to live, you know, we need those things. We want our kids to be healthy, our young people to not be in foster homes, you know, we want our families to be together, have the resources to take care of them. So and the other thing I wanted to say too is that I have this song, a Two-Spirit song, that was passed to me by Taleni, and it comes from Wade Blevins from the Osage tribe in the States. And so that song is about two spirits rejoining the circles in our communities, you know, because we're the circle of our communities. Because when the colonizers came over, and I really liked how Jaynaya put how the roles of women were influenced right away, because that's what, like, the patriarchy and the European culture of gender roles, you know, was dominant and is dominant to this day. And our people have internalized these. And so, you know, as two-spirit and as women, you know, we sort of need to reclaim those things. Even as men, you know, we need to reclaim our traditional gender roles in our communities. And for me as a two-spirit person, that means you know, reclaiming that as well. And there's not just one, you know, this is sort of how Western culture can mess things up, or the English language can mess things up. Two-spirit means so many things. You know, there were different types of genders in our communities, and so it wasn't just one thing sort of thing. And so anyways, you know, our culture and spirituality are connected, and those things honored who we are. And so yeah, that's what I would say.
I am just so bowled over by your responses, both of your responses. You're just so amazing. And my gosh, there's so much here. We are going to leave a few minutes for questions at the end. We have 2 more questions to go, but if anybody in the audience has a question or a comment, just throw it in the chat. But the next one is, so it's 2123, it's 100 years from now, and you're an ancestor. What do you hope that your great nieces or nephews say about you? Hopefully they're not speechless.
I want my nieces, nephews, and nibblings, you know, in 100 years to say, thanks for helping me ride in this Mercedes Benz and making our life so deadly, because we just really did a good job, you know, healing ourselves. And thanks for helping on that story of letting me be me, because I really think, you know, that's what we're doing. We're reclaiming who we are. But it doesn't have to be monetary. The Mercedes Benz can be a metaphor too.
At that point, we might be flying around in spaceships, or they might be flying around in spaceships. So go ahead, Jaynaya.
No, that's all right. I just hope to be remembered. It's one of those things, like you look at when we went to Marai and we had all the ancestors on in those beautiful images in there, and when we have like a sacred space in our families' lives, we're on walls or our images are everywhere. So I think for me, the greatest thing would be kind of being remembered, and have people remembering me with a smile. Probably be the biggest hope that I have, because they kind of have seen that you can do it and you can be whatever you want to be. So that's the biggest thing for me.
Amazing. Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, but I love both of your answers, so thank you. So the last one, so what is one deadly piece of advice that you can offer others to help them be the confident person their ancestors prayed for them to be?
Yeah, Jaynaya, you want to go?
I think I always give this advice out to everyone. It's like find what makes you confident, what connects you to your elders, whether it is before you go into something, having a moment to connect with country, taking your shoes off and grounding yourself, or wearing your deadly black armor in some way, or inviting a person to that space with you, to also share, because we're stronger together. But once you find that deadliness, hold on to it, and amplify it in any way you can.
But up. I would just jump in and say that, you know, listen to your feelings and honor them, all the feelings that you have, because I feel like if something's wrong, your feelings are going to tell you, you know, if something is right, your feelings are going to tell you. And I feel like, you know, in a world that wasn't built for us, both, you know, due to patriarchy, white supremacy, colonialism, you know, I feel like, you know, we're constantly asked, mostly indirectly, but sometimes straight up, you know, to not acknowledge our feelings, or, you know, we're gaslit in some way or another. And so I just think that, you know, it really comes back to, you know, what do you feel? And sometimes that's a hard route, you know what I mean? It's, people will say, well, you know, I can't, you know, speak up against my boss, you know, or something, because I might get fired, or I might, you know, I need to provide for my family. And I think those things are really true. And, you know, and so if you can find a way to honor your feelings and still survive, you know, I think that's really good. And then, and not judge yourself for just surviving. You know, sometimes I think even with like Indigenous excellence, you know, we sort of highlight sometimes, just things that I feel are unrealistic for average people, that we highlight, you know, highly achieved people. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, you know, that we all have a place in the circle, and that we just need to honor how we feel. And, you know, and in that way, I think our spirit is trying to guide us.
Thank you for that. I'm just watching a spider the swing outside my window, so it must be spring here in Treaty 6. We have a question from Tammy, a statement and a question, so I'll read it out for everybody. Much of your wisdom has been gained from connecting with elders and old ones. How would you guide young ones or those early in their journey to share space with these people, as it can be quite difficult? Do you have any thoughts or guidance how we can help our young ones connect?
Well, I guess the first thought I have, if I could jump in, Jaynaya, just that I feel like our culture is to be connected intergenerationally. And so if people are feeling that it's hard to connect with different generations, you know, that's an outcome of colonialism. And, you know, I was on the West Coast recently on Vancouver Island, and there's this managed alcohol program that we were there to go connect with the team, because we were doing one here in Mohkinstsis, Calgary. And one of the elders shared that they wanted to be the role of auntie. They approached this elder to ask, would you be an elder for this project and for this you know, in-person elder for this program? And she said, no, I just want to be there as an auntie. And I think that's a really important thing. Like in our culture, you know, we do things like in a connected way, and that you know, like you were saying, Jaynaya, those young people, they come to us, you know, to ask us things that they've been feeling deeply, and they want to talk about it. And, you know, the more that we can just have spaces where, you know, you can have aunties and uncles and uncles connecting, you know, on a, you know, relative level, like being relatives with each other, you know, I think that's important. And if that's feeling hard, you know, I guess, you know, it's like a process of decolonizing, I guess, is sort of how I would say.
Yeah, and I think for us here, we in Melbourne, we've kind of created a women's leadership program that was kind of created by Aboriginal women for Aboriginal women, and it hadn't been really done on that government level before for the state government. So creating that program, we made sure to create space to have aunties in the room or elders in residence in that space, and through some of the facilitated sessions, they would be weaving in the back or making and creating on their little table. But then when we did the second rollout, we went, well, we didn't have very many young ones. Why was that? And so for us to dig deeper and try and just figure out we're creating a program for a youth to step into, but they didn't feel comfortable stepping into that program at the moment, because we kind of created a safe space for elders and our Indigenous leaders in that space right now, not that future. So how did we kind of, so what we started to do was kind of open up space, or create literally set youth cohort going, okay, so these positions are for 3 of our young people, and opening that up was really interesting, because we had this young woman who came along, and she did the introductory welcome activity, and it was really beautiful because a lot of the aunties had no idea about pronouns at all, and she identified as they, them. So when she introduced herself and used her pronouns, or did the introduction and said, I want you to use your pronouns, a lot of the aunties went, what pronouns are they? So like being able to educate aunties on like this new introductory process, where we always did who we are, where we're from, and our language groups. Now we're doing pronouns as well. So the aunties are like real deadly. And then I went into another meeting with some of these aunties a little bit after that, and they introduced themselves with their pronouns. I'm like going, oh, I love them. So it's just kind of creating that safe space for everyone, like finding out why our young ones aren't stepping into those spaces, or if there's spaces that they feel safe in, how do we connect the aunties or uncles or whoever we need to connect them with into those spaces as well. Like I come from a strong line of Aboriginal women, like Pop's got 7 deadly sisters, so I have always seen strong Black women, and mum's a single mum and she's pretty much done everything, and I kind of go, my gift is giving other people, showing other people that we can do stuff. So I share along my social media because I want them to see you can be doing things and looking the way we do. And so for me, that like opening up my social platform for my nieces and nephews to be looking at too, and liking and sharing pictures, and opportunities for them to kind of go in and tag them in if there's any deadly programs to be going to or applying for, and went, this is interesting, do you want to apply for it, let's sit down and do it together. So sometimes it's forced interaction, but it's finding out what the need is, because like we're in a different world now. Like people sit there and play Fortnite with people all over the world, so we kind of would jump on planes and meet people, but these kids are meeting amazing people from all over the place at the moment without even leaving the house. So it's just identifying how the world's changed, but how we can keep that spirituality like we were talking about. How do we put that back into our lives, because it's always been there, it's just that space was kind of pushed aside or made us feel ashamed of having that in our lives. So how do we kind of re-empower that?
Thank you both. So we're going to begin to wrap it up, but just to summarize what I've taken away from our conversation today, is feeling deadly or being deadly is being in yourself and in the place that you need to be and that your ancestors meant for you to be. So I guess my last question, which is reflective of Tammy's, is there one way that you consistently go back to connect or reconnect with yourself, your true self, your deadliness? Is there one thing that you do?
You want to go, Jaynaya?
I make time for the oldies. Like I am, and you guys would have seen it, I'm always either sitting with or talking to a bunch of old elders. Doesn't matter if they're mine or anybody else's, but old people seem to gravitate towards me. But I love sharing space with them. So for me, that's my way of grounding myself and kind of realizing that everyone's on that learning journey. We're not all struggling, and sometimes those elders kind of re-empower us, not just in our deadliness, but you see how deadly they are, and you should kind of share that glow. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's really good. And not not to say you're old, but I just want to acknowledge to my traditional mom, Brenda Littlelight, in the room there. You know, I think having relatives and practicing our kinship systems, which is not necessarily based on blood, is you know, really important to making sure that, you know, you can be yourself. You know, your aunties and uncles were your parents as well in your community and helped raise you. And today, when we can do that, I think that's really helpful. The other thing that comes to mind is that I feel like Pedagogy of the Oppressed has been a really influential book on my thinking. And one of the processes he describes in there is that we need to become critically aware of the ways that we're oppressed. And then once that clarity of how we're being oppressed is there, then we take action on that. And once we've taken action, we go back and we reflect on that action and try and describe the world more clearly. And so we go through that process of going back and forth. And so I had a call recently with somebody who is of mixed race ancestry, and you know, basically just acknowledged that they had been sort of including Black folks, but ignoring Indigenous folks. And, you know, it might have been a good, you know, thing. They sort of said, well, we don't have capacity to do it right, so we're just not going to do it now. But for me, something felt wrong when that was happening. And so I sort of said, you know, you know, what is it that I'm feeling? I was really feeling something that whole time. And so, you know, I think in that way, they were sort of representing a way that we as Native people experience structural racism, is that we're just left out, sort of thing. And that, you know, the appropriate response to, you know, noticing that you're leaving or you can't include Indigenous people appropriately is not just to put it on hold for now, you know, or at least that's what I feel. So I think, you know, taking time to listen to your feelings and understand, okay, why am I feeling this way? And so that you can accurately describe the ways that the things that maybe are oppressing you in that moment, so that you can, you know, maybe that action is just to acknowledge that you didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't your fault. And you weren't being mean to that person or something. So yeah, I'd say become critical of the systems, and also how you end up participating in those systems.
Thank you both. I also want to reiterate the keenness to get the book list from Auntie Sarah Good Medicine. There seems, yeah, I bet there's quite a few on there that are really good. I also do want to do a shout out to Auntie Bren. Bren Littlelight, I saw her on the stage at a conference last year, and I just thought, she is such a badass, and she actually connected me with Auntie Sarah. So thank you, Auntie Bren. I also want to acknowledge Knowledge Keeper Bob Silverthorne, who's just been a long-standing supporter of INDIGI-X since the very beginning. I saw that he was driving somewhere, so I hope that it was his wife and not him, but thanks for joining us. And everybody else, I think I know everybody here on the call today, so thank you so much for joining us. Nana Skumten, to our two panelists, our deadly aunties, who are just a wealth of knowledge, and I'm just so feeling the love and connection too. And I also admire your strength. And yeah, that's a wrap, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I hope you have a good weekend, a deadly April, and yeah, we'll see you again.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and shout out all the nieces, nephews, and all the oldies.
Thanks, guys.